Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Crown Victoria video. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 problems that most Crown Victoria owners will experience over the course of ownership, and also, is it still worth it to buy a Crown Victoria in 2021. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first big common issue that almost every Crown Victoria enthusiast or owner knows about already, or even people just interested in the Crown Vics in general, it's the 4.6 liter intake manifold. Ford did update them in 2001, I believe, for the 2002 model, but unfortunately it just kind of moved the issue to a new location, and the intake manifolds are known to start leaking and start to crack around 120 to 150,000 miles, or about the ages of 12 to usually about 17 or 18 years old, which unfortunately means that mine is probably going to be due to be replaced here soon, because the car is 14 years old, even though it's in good condition and only 87,000 miles. I'm probably going to replace it out of preventative maintenance sometime within the next year. So that is definitely probably the biggest issue Crown Victoria owners will face. The next very common issue most Crown Vic owners will face if they keep the car long enough, or maybe if you're lucky it's already been replaced, but it is the plastic blend door actuator, which you have to get under the glove box for, and it's way up in about this location, unfortunately. So that is definitely one thing most people will have to get replaced in the time of owning a Crown Vic. It's definitely a few hour job, and usually quite a few dollars to get it done at a dealership, unfortunately. So I think my local Ford dealer, which is 89 bucks an hour, quoted about 5 hours plus the part, which is $89 Canadian plus tax. It would have been $800. Luckily my friend is going to be able to do it here during the summertime, so that'll get done. What the blend door actuator is it allows you to turn it from hot to cold or cold to hot. Unfortunately, this car is stuck on cold, which means the blend door actuator is stuck, and we know that that's the reason, because you can turn the blend door actuator in behind, and usually what happens is the plastic pieces just get brittle in it, or the gears just eventually don't have any grip and can't stop turning, or the actual motor itself just stops functioning. This is definitely an unfortunately common issue, but usually once you replace it, you don't usually have to do it again for quite some time. So this car, like I said, is 14 years old. It's probably due for that anyway, just because it is a common problem on these vehicles. The next issue on the Ford Crown Vics for number 3 is the odometer, and this is a 2006 and only an up problem. It is the odometers will stop eventually functioning. So what happens is eventually your odometer light starts getting dim, and then eventually it turns off, and then the rest of the odometer eventually will start to just stop functioning, and you have 2 options. You can buy a new odometer and get the mileage rolled over, but your hours will not save. Or you can send it off to get it fixed, but I don't really think there's anywhere to get it fixed here in Canada, so it'd probably be a bit of a venture for it. Luckily, mine still works for now, but normally on these 2006 plus models, it is very, very common for the soldering in behind to start to become weak, and eventually the odometer just starts to go over the course of time. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you or me, but it is definitely a common issue. Some of them just last for the life of the vehicle, and then there's also a lot of other ones that unfortunately, like I said, you do have to get replaced. So hopefully those of us watching this have one that lasts forever, but a lot of them have been soldered improperly, and it probably should have been a recall. But let's be honest, at the end of the day, Ford did not care about these vehicles during the last 5 or 6 years of their lifespan, and as a result of that, a lot of these issues will just never get recalled or fixed in general. The next issue most owners will eventually face if they keep the car long enough, usually about 120 to again about 150,000 miles. The rear axles bearings will eventually need to be replaced. They just eventually wear out from usage, and definitely earlier in cars that were used for general patrol. So definitely watch for that. Usually you'll start to see the leak, or the rear wheel, you'll be able to have a lot of play in it, and you'll know that it is time to get that done. Can be a bit costly, because usually you're just better off getting a full rear end rebuild, because once one side starts to go, good chance that the other side's gonna have to get replaced here eventually, especially with most of these being a limited slip differential. Both sides of the both sides of the car will usually spin at about the same rate, giving it approximately the same use, give or take. So unfortunately, that is another kind of costly fix that sometimes Crown Vic owners will run into. It is more common, or I shouldn't say it's more common, but it's more susceptible to happen earlier on vehicles that have been used as an actual patrol car. So I came inside because the bugs are getting bad out. It's pollen season and all that. But last but not least, the last major common issue with the Ford Crown Vics is a leaking gas tank. Usually what happens is there's a little panel on the front of the gas tank, and then also it has the gas tank straps going over top it. So it's very common for dust, dirt, salt, water, all that stuff to get trapped in there, eventually rust the gas tank out. I've even heard of people living in non-salty areas having to replace the gas tank. So definitely watch for that, but it is definitely a more common issue in the Northeast, aka the Rust Belt. Usually that can happen anywhere between 7 to 10 years based on the Crown Victorias I've seen. You'll usually want to replace the gas tank and the gas tank straps with them because they're both prone to rusting out because of where the dust and dirt and all that stuff accumulates. But I've also read a few people saying that they live in California or they live in Florida or somewhere like that, or somewhere that's just kind of damp. Sometimes, I guess California isn't damp, but I have read of people, even in drier areas, having to replace the gas tanks just because that's where dirt and stuff accumulates and eventually rusts the gas tank out, albeit it is a lot less common in those areas. So it's definitely more of a salt belt issue, but definitely something to keep your eye open for. And one other honorable mention is the steering shaft in these. There was a recall, so if you ever have stiff steering or anything like that, definitely get your steering shaft checked out and at the dealer, and they will tell you if you're able to get it recalled. It is only available on 2005 and up, but it is an issue on all your Ford Crown Vics, I think, from 2003 and up. And ultimately, last but not least, it is 2021, meaning even the newest Crown Vics are 10 years old. Is it still worth it to buy a Ford Crown Victoria or just in general a Panther body car? I'm going to say yes. Even with gas prices slowly starting to creep up, they're still overall very reliable vehicles. The issues on them are very well known. You can work on them very easily. Will I say they're as reliable as maybe a Toyota Corolla as a daily driver where almost nothing ever goes wrong on the mid-2000 years? Maybe not, but also a Toyota Corolla can be very boring to drive. I drove one for the last 2 winters, but it was a very, very, very reliable vehicle. But ultimately, these Crown Vics are definitely something that you want to buy, even as just a Sunday car if you want, because they're that comfortable, seats are comfortable and all that. And like I said, they're ultimately reliable. Gas mileage isn't great, but it's not absolutely terrible. On a P71 model, you can expect about 21 to 22 on the highway, and just lugging around town about 17, 18, and then straight city, probably only about 14, 15. And the civilian model, you can give it about 24, 25 on the highway, even a little bit more than that with conservative driving, slugging it around probably 19, 20 miles per gallon, and just straight up city about 15, 16. So yeah, I'd say they're worth it if you can find a clean one at the right price, and that right price right now is something very important because clean Crown Vics are hard to find, and when you find them, they can easily be a few $1,000s more than what they were just a few years back. These cars have gotten rare. Even the beat up ones now are starting to go up in value because people just know that people want these cars and there's hardly any of them left. Hard to believe now, just 7-8 years ago, people were like, oh, we'll never see Crown Vics disappear. They've been around for so long. Well, guess what? They're all starting to disappear faster than people can blink their eyes at. And getting good Crown Vics now has become a hassle. You can still find the odd one, clapped out one, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to be putting more money into that car than it is ultimately worth it. To find a really clean Crown Vic now, guys, definitely get ready to shell out $4,500, or even just a clean Crown Vic, I guess. Get ready to shell out $4,500 to $5,000. Anything less than that, you're probably going to start to get into issues territory if you start getting under the $4,000 mark or just higher miles, because that's just the way the market of these has gone. No one really predicted it to hit this fast. And I guess all used car prices are up right now, but if you look at Crown Vics, they are up a ton compared to what they were. Like, they're way, way, way up. So if you want a Crown Vic, get one as soon as you can. If you find a nice clean one, go pick it up. Hopefully you won't regret it. I know I personally haven't. I've been driving these cars now for 7 years, and I've loved every single one of them except for that first Grand Marquis I had. That one was a piece of crap. But both Crown Vics I've had have been awesome. This P71's been my favorite. Still just have to get the power steering oil cooler replaced, and also the e-brake in the back, and then the blend door actuator. But overall, it's been an awesome car. I've owned it now for 12,000 miles and over 2 years. Definitely don't regret it, guys. And those of you that live in the Salt Belt, unfortunately, it's going to be even harder for you to find a clean Crown Vic because most of them have rusted out fenders, doors, gas tanks, rear dog legs, and all that now. I know getting one here in Nova Scotia, it's basically impossible. They're gone. The Crown Vics and Grand Marquis, the good ones, they're all gone. You'll find ones that are rusted out, but it's just the way things are, guys. So if you want the Crown Vic, go get yourselves one. You'll enjoy it, and see you all next time for another Crown Vic video.